noche, yo puedo ver y en la noche nadie me ve.
Good evening, sinners, and welcome back to another episode of Saturday Night Sinema. Of course, as always, I am your host, Sawyer St. Sin, and tonight we're going to be talking about, what makes your blood boil, what scares you the most, what really just gets under your skin, and it's The Fear from 1995. Now, this is The Fear, not Fear. Fear is a different movie with Mark Wahlberg. Still actually a really good movie. You know, check that one out too. But this one is The Fear. And I love the tagline because he is whatever scares you the most. So, like, we're talking about something that can, kind of play on your fear. And he's not the Scarecrow from Batman. As much as I would like him to be the Scarecrow from Batman, it's not the Scarecrow from Batman. So, like I said, this was released in 1995, January. It's directed by Vincent Robert, and this was actually one of the last movies that he directed. The writer is Ron Ford, and it's actually based off of a short story situation that him and another writer wrote together, and I don't have that other guy's name. I'm so sorry. But as always, like, I'm watching this on Tubi. Again, I know, a plug for Tubi, but listen, you guys, they have got some of the best range of horror movies around. They've got the slashers, and they've got the suspenses, and they've got older movies. We've got Hammer. We even have the Hammer TV series. So I mean, guys, if you haven't checked out Tubi streaming services, check out Tubi streaming services. It's great. And again, like I said, not sponsored by them. And I don't pay them money either. It's free. It's free. Alright, enough of that blabber. Let's get into the cast. And when I go through the cast, I'll also kind of tell you what we learn about their fear. The ones that we know what their fear is. Because some of them we never find out. So, first off, we have our leading man, Mr. Eddie Bowes. Maybe it's Bose. It's with a Z at the end. He plays Richard, and he is a college student, actually a psychiatry student. And so it's his big idea to get everyone together to have this little powwow weekend trip about fear. And we learn that what he fears the most is Morty. And Morty, he is played by Eric Weiss. And see, now, Morty is a wooden mannequin that we learn that Richard's grandfather had in his store, and it was made by an Indian shaman. And it was said that whatever clothes that Morty was wearing, something about it would just entice customers into coming into the store and buying things. So we kind of get the feeling that, Morty has some juju in him. Some kind of presence of some sort. And then we have Heather Midway. She plays Ashley, who is Richard's fiance. I don't know. we didn't get to see like that part. We just got to see her like throw a ring at him, and like she's talking about marriage and kids and all kinds of things real fast. But so it's never said what she fears, because she didn't want to go through the session. She was feeling all kinds of pressure and she just didn't want to do it. But we see that maybe it's something that's going on campus that fears her, and I'll explain a little bit of that later. And then we have Anne Turkle. She plays Leslie. She is one of the guys, the college students. I don't want to give away anything before I start talking about it, but older sister. Okay, adopted older sister is what we're starting off with. But she's afraid of getting old, which I feel is just, I mean, that's a little easy for, you know, like having the oldest woman in the room being afraid of being old or getting old. It's the low-hanging fruit on the totem pole there. Then we have Vince Edwards, who plays Uncle Pete. And Uncle Pete runs like a Santa's Village situation, and so when we see him, he's dressed as Santa. And he does the cop-out, you know, I'm Santa, so I'm afraid that kids will stop believing in me. Gives that cop-out. But then he starts talking about old Peter? Black Peter. God, Jesus. Black Peter. And says that is like one of Santa's helpers that like kidnaps the bad kids. And it sounded horrible, and I didn't want anything to do with it. But like he's pointing at the kids, you know, these like college students, and he's saying this, and it's like, dude, I mean, okay, great foreshadowing for like some people coming up dead. And then we have Darren Hems. He plays Troy, who is Richard's like best friend, and I don't know how the hell they are friends, because Troy looks like he just stepped out of like a, you know, a drum circle. You know, white hippie boy with dreads. You know, you've probably run across him. Smell a lot like patchouli, I bet. But so he's afraid of bugs. Again, it's kind of a low. I would have liked to see them get into some like real good fears, you know. And they get into one that would spark a lot of conversation with a lot of people and be real fun. But that's also, I guess, a touchy subject for some people, so I guess that's why it makes it so interesting. Anywho, moving on, we have Anna Kern, who plays Tanya, and she's Uncle Pete's little girlfriend, who looks to be at least, if not more, 20 years younger than him, and she's afraid of the water. She says that it's because, like, you know, kids being kids, like, threw her into the water when she was younger, but really it was she witnessed a man drown and tried to save him and couldn't. So she's afraid of water. And then we have Antonio Lewis Todd as Gerald. And his fear is the one that I'm like, this is pretty interesting and really like would be up for some discussion. His fear is religion, pretty much in a nutshell. His dad was a, you know, hellfire and brimstone type of preacher, who would pretty much say that he was damned for all eternity for just the littlest of things. So you could see why, like, religion is kind of a touchy subject with Gerald. And then that brings us to Leland Hayward III. He plays Vance. Vance is the boyfriend of, oh my goodness, Leslie. I almost completely forgot there. And he, again, this is like a low-hanging fruit there. He's afraid of poverty. He's afraid of being poor. A lot of us are. Hey, and a lot of us, unfortunately, are poor, and it sucks. But, there's, like, really nothing to be, like, afraid of that much, right? I mean, everyone comes on tough times. And you can change your fortune if you try hard enough and work hard enough and, Anyways, that's another discussion for another time. And then we have Monique Mannon, and she plays Mindy. That's Gerald's girlfriend, and she's afraid of heights. And she's a very spiritual person. She immediately, when she saw Morty, said something that she felt that there was a presence about him, that there was a presence there. She also, in her session about talking about her fear, talked about how in all of her past lives, falling is how she died. So heights is something that she's afraid of because she doesn't want to repeat that scenario of dying from a fall again. Then we come to Mr. Wes Craven makes an appearance. Yeah, the master of horror himself, Wes Craven. He plays Dr. Arnold, which is Richard's professor in college. And Richard's talking to him about basically how this retreat is going to be part of his thesis type situation, and just just talking to him about whatever, and he's like, he does give the piece of advice of most psychiatrists go into this because they need therapy themselves, and I just love that because I love that line because to be honest, 98 or higher percent of us do need some kind of therapy. Not necessarily sitting in with a shrink and talking to them, but something that is therapy for us that relieves, some stress and anxiety and, day-to-day blah, And then we get to some of the lesser, little players, but they do their character is involved and does have a big thing of the storyline. We have Hunter. Y'all, I can't pronounce this little kid's name. He was a little kid in this, but he plays young Richard, and he's the cutest little boy. And for most of the movie, when he has flashbacks and stuff, we're just seeing the kid running, away from something, and you're not sure what it is. And he just shows up in the flashbacks that Richard has of around the time that his mother passed away. And Rebecca Baldwin plays Rosie, which is Richard's mom. She died when he was a little girl, or oh my gosh, a little girl. When he was a little boy. Goodness. Y'all, am I going to be able to do one night where I don't slip up any? Probably not, because I have a hard time talking sometimes. But if you want to place your bets, go ahead and do it. Then we have Gregory Littman, who plays Claude. And that's Richard's dad. We don't really get to know a whole lot about him. He looks like a very stern man. We do get to know that he blames Richard for his mother's death, which is horrible. You don't need to, no little child should be blamed for that. And then we have Stacey Edwards, and that's Becky. And she's the person who is basically first, like, seen as getting attacked or killed. I'm not sure exactly which one she is. But she rounds out the cast. Okay, so now that our cast out of the way, I just wanted to mention a little things about, the soundtrack. You know me, guys. I like a good soundtrack. So, on this soundtrack, it's a little different for a horror movie of this nature. You wouldn't expect for there to be a whole bunch of, like, rappers on it. Well, okay. It's not rappers, like a single person, more like groups. So there's one rapper who raps a theme song about Morty, the wooden mannequin. And it's Eastmit. I probably said that wrong. But it is the funniest thing. It's not meant to be funny, okay? They worked hard on it. But it's also just kind of funny to, like, rap about a mannequin, Okay, so other people on the soundtrack. We have the Headless Horsemen, the Flatliners, and that, again, is with a Z. The Grave Diggers. And the piece de resistance on this is Insane Clown Posse. Yes, ICP themselves are on this with a song that I shared on my Facebook. If you guys follow me, it's Dead Body Man, and it's actually really good. I actually like it. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, so they went with a lot of the horrorcore. I didn't want to make that sound really bad. But they went with a lot of those rappers and groups that were coming up from, like, the Detroit area. If you don't know what horrorcore is, it is a mixture of heavy metal and rap and horror themes. That's what it is. If you're not familiar with it, you should check it out. Some of it's good. Some of it is strange. I don't know. I think some of it's good. I like it. I actually like ICP. Just let's keep that between us, okay? Cool. All right, so on to the movie. Kind of a synopsis time. So, we start off with, Richard telling Dr. Arnold, like, what he's going to do on this weekend. Dr. Arnold gives him a ball, and it has, like, different puzzle pieces, like, in it. And he said for him to find the missing piece. And then we cut to, there's a girl, Miss Becky, who is walking the campus alone to go to her dorm room, and she runs into a policeman or security guard, and he's like, hey, you really shouldn't be out this late by yourself, there's, like, a rapist on campus. Yeah, guys, we start off the movie with a rapist on campus. Oh, goodness. So Becky's like, oh no, I'll be fine, it's just right over there, like, we're good. So we see her, like, get to her dorm room, and she's, like, fiddling, trying to get something out of her bag, and she drops something, and when she comes up, like, literally, guys, this rapist must be a ninja, because he fell out of the sky from nowhere. Literally. Just from nowhere. It's crazy. It's crazy. So that's during the opening credits, you guys, that we already have, an attack. So next scene, Richard is putting up a flyer for his weekend, fear retreat. When Troy comes up and he's like, "Yay, what's up?" And they're talking about the thing, and we see Troy freak out a little bit when like a bee was like near him. But Richard's like, "Yeah, man, like you should really like come out, like, it'll be nice and whatever." And they're approached by some detectives, and turns out that Troy was Becky's boyfriend at one point, and so now he's a suspect. And they like get his information and whatever, and then the next scene that we see is all of them like meeting up to the bus, going on their retreat. And for some reason, Leslie and her like boyfriend, who have nothing to do with the college or like are going to with Troy. Yeah. And Vance is acting like real sketchy. None of us, you really don't know why yet, but he's real sketchy. Him in his trench coat and sunglasses, and whatever he did to his arm, it's just sketchy. So they pull up to the cabin, which is Richard's childhood home, where he hasn't been in a very long time. But his dad passed away, his uncle kind of like takes care of things, but they show up there, and that's where we find Morty. Like there's like a pull-out bed from the wall, and Morty's just like laying there. Good old wooden Morty, just being creepy. And there's a word that keeps playing like over and over, like that Richard keeps saying, diametric. And we're like, what in the hell? Like, and he's trying to figure it out. He doesn't understand it. And like his girlfriend finally like, figures it out that it means like in Greek or something. It was like the opposite, something like that. But so they decide to set Morty up in a chair in the living room during their fear sessions. So it's basically like they're talking to the mannequin about what their fear is. So Leslie goes first, says it's about being old. Vance begrudgingly gets up there and is like, and begrudgingly, like, again, says it's like poverty. And Richard asks what like happened to his arm, and he, pulls away, and he doesn't want to talk about it. Also turns out that Leslie got fired from her, or no, she quit her executive job that was like paying like shit tons of money. And now just like her and Vance are just like driving around doing nothing. I don't know. And Troy goes with the bugs. But like Richard asks Ashley to come up, and she starts having like, kind of what seems to be like a little panic attack. And he just like keeps pushing her and like saying, "Come on," and she like fucking storms out, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And then later on, Uncle Pete comes around with his little girl. She talks about being afraid of the water and why, and he does that whole Santa like, cop out answer. Mindy talks about the heights, and Gerald briefly talks about, his father and the religion aspect of that. Then everyone just kind of, they decide to go to the Santa's village for no good reason, it seems like. Oh, well, I guess some other things happen. So Richard wants to work with people one-on-one with their fears. So him and Mindy are on the balcony, and she has drawn like a ladder situation, and he's asking her, you know, he's kind of like hypnotized her, but seems like, but as he's like pushing her to kind of like open up about her fear and about heights, she starts like frantically like drawing, and it's a face, and she says something about, you know, like being daddy's like good girl, and, you know, doing what she's told, you know, and no, it's too high, so looks like she's drawing a picture of her dad's face, but that session gets ended quite abruptly, and then Richard sees that like Pete is trying to like get his like, you know, girlfriend or whatever to get in the hot tub, and she's totally freaked out. She doesn't want to, you know, just freaked out altogether. So Richard goes down, and, you know, he's like, you know, pushing her like that could like, you know, cause even more trauma than, you know, the fear itself and whatever. And so Richard goes, and like, his girlfriend is there, and she's upset that you know, he's like talking to this, you know, beautiful woman who's in a bikini, and he goes off to talk to her, and like then Uncle Pete is like, you know, yelling at Richard, and anyways, Mindy is left alone, and she, not alone, I guess, because Ashley's like on a bench, like, but she's not close to her. But she gets in, and all of a sudden, fucking Morty pops up. Morty pops up out of the hot tub, just like bouncing around like a weird float. It's very weird, but it scares the shit out of Mandy, and she starts screaming, and Pete and Richard run in, and, you know, Richard's like, you know, whatever, and kind of blaming Ashley, because Ashley was just standing by it like a while ago, and so blames Ashley for like maybe putting Morty there or something, and that's when Ashley's like, you know what, screw you, and like gives him back the ring. But so like he gets, you know, Mindy calmed down, and they talk about the water, and like works with her on like, you know, getting that fear like, you know, kind of erased. And he's like, you know, water is not the enemy here. So let's go to where things really start to get good in Santa's village. So in Santa's village, they kind of split up and all go their like separate ways, you know, and Vance has continually tried to put the moves on Mindy. Like he is just being a full-on creeper. Like walked in on her in the bathtub and like tried to touch her while she was in the bathtub, kind of creeper. It's very strange, very odd. But she like splits up from the group, and she thinks that she hears Gerald's voice coming from the train, so she hops on Santa's train. And for some reason starts to get freaked out. I mean, you hopped on, just hop off. But so she is in the middle of the tunnel, and the train stops. And again, she thinks that she hears Gerald. So she gets out of the train tunnel, and then all of a sudden is like attacked from behind. We don't see who it is. We just see like black gloves, attacked from behind. And like the next thing we know, she's like stumbling out, and Troy and Richard are the ones that like find her, and they just automatically think like she got raped, and that they're like the campus rapist is on like one of them with them. But at the same time that this is happening, Gerald is trying to find Mindy, and he sees what he thinks is her silhouette in the window of one of the Santa Village buildings. I don't know what building it was. And that's all that we see of him. We don't see him come out. When they're like saying that they need to take Mindy back to the cabin, like everybody comes out but Gerald, and no one seems to be worried about that he didn't come out. Like no one's really, yeah. But so this is where like Leslie and Vance have a falling out, because Vance thinks that she like told them what they had done, and he like points a gun and he's like gonna shoot everybody, gonna shoot you, and then just jumps in Pete's Jeep and heads back to the cabin before anyone else can, because he wants the money that him and Leslie stole from her job. Well, needless to say, he can't find the money when he gets back to the cabin. He's like, that bitch. And then we have like a James Woods from Family Guy moment, he's like, ooh, piece of candy. Ooh, piece of candy. Yeah. He just follows the money trail to his death. And also, like, it was like under like a crawl space. So there's like, like a lift up door. And he basically just like got, hammered with a door to death and just fell into the basement. I don't know if anyone ever found him. He was just laying under there for quite some time. If no one found him, like, he's gonna stink at some point, guys. Okay, so the gang gets back to the cabin, and like they're trying to search for Vance, but they don't really find him. And then Pete and Tanya decide that, oh no, I'm sorry. So they're like looking all around for him. They don't find him. They go back outside, and like all of the tires on the van have been slashed. And so Tanya and Pete are like, okay, well, we're gonna go back up to Santa's Village, and there's a work truck up there, like, whatever. So like they start running off, and like they get split up, and Tanya's just like in the woods, and she comes across what like seems to be something, and then it just winds up fucking being nothing. Anyways, so Pete is like looking around trying to see if he finds anything. He opens up the building that Gerald had gone into, and y'all, he is full on like Gerald is full on crucified, like to the wall, nailed to the wall. And then he, not only that, but then he has like a crucifix shoved into his heart. Like, it was the craziest thing. Like, I was not expecting that. And then to see it, like, around, like, a bunch of elves in Santa's workshop type situation, nuts. It was absolutely crazy. But, so, Gerald finds, you know, the work truck and the gun, and at the time that all of this is happening, back at the cabin, Ashley is sitting there, and then all of a sudden, Morty, Mr. Wooden Mannequin, starts fucking moving. And this is, I mean, this is really the first time that we've seen him, like, up and in action. But it looks like he's controlling Mindy. Like, Mindy sits up and her eyes are, like, full, like, glossed over, like, milky white. And she starts to attack Richard. And then Richard is having flashbacks as to what happened, because, like, they're saying that what had happened to his mom was matricide, which is, you know, like, murdering your mother. You know, and he's remembering back, and he's like, no, I didn't do it. Well, it turns out little young Richard caught his mom in bed with another man. And, like, his mom threw, like, a wine glass at him when she saw that he was there, and, like, it cut the side of his face. And so, of course, like, you know, this little boy who looked to be, like, 5 or 6 runs and tells his dad, and he's, like, bleeding. And, you know, then we find out that it was really Richard's father who killed his mother and buried her. And, but he blames Richard. Like, if Richard hadn't come said anything, his mom would still be alive. But, like, come on, y'all. He's, like, 5 or 6, fucking bleeding from a gash on his face. How's he not supposed to... Why is there one point in every movie that makes me upset? I don't know. Anyways, so we see Richard, like, working through this. And, the flashbacks that he was having from running, like, he was running from Morty, and, like, it ended up that he was at, like, his mom's gravesite, and, you know, his dad was like, do you know what happens to little boys? He's like, Morty gets them, and then, like, Morty is, like, standing behind him, and it's freaky. So, as Mindy is attacking Richard, he sends her flying over the banister of the balcony. And you can see, like, the spirit of Morty, like, leaving her body, right? Okay, so now, as that is happening, there's a lot of stuff going on here, man. As that is happening, Ashley, like, because when she saw Morty moving, she was out. She was out. So she's, like, running through the woods, trying to, I guess, get back to Santa's village. I don't know exactly where she was going. But she runs into Troy. And this is where we learn that, you know, Troy is the campus rapist. Oh my god, I almost said racist. That's not the right word. Rapist. He's the rapist. So he's, like, going after Ashley, like, you know, trying to attack her. And, you know, she's just like all the other girls, like, you know, rejecting him, whatever. And, then, you know, she pushes him into something, and there's a bunch of bugs, and he freaks out, and, he ends up, you know, falling and dying. Bugs. I don't know, that one was kind of a cop out. I really wanted to see something, like, really horrendous happen to the, you know, to the rapist. Oh, and I forgot, Leslie, like, told Troy, that, she's actually his mother. Y'all, and they were just making out like a little bit before that happened. And so Troy, poor little Troy's already screwed up, you know, because he's like raping all these girls, and then he like learns that someone that he wants to run away with and have a relationship is really his mom. So yeah, his life didn't end on during a good point in his life for sure. He was a whole kick him when he's down moment there. But she runs off to try to find him, and she thinks that she found him, but really she found Morty in his like flannel, and then Morty just like ages her till she's dead. See, the ones that have the cop out like fears are just not very interesting. Their deaths aren't interesting. I mean, listen, I like the concept of, you know, you dying by what you're afraid of, but some of them are kind of anticlimactic. Anyways, so Ashley like goes back to the cabin, finds Richard, you know, and but he's like, I gotta go back inside, you know, and he's gotta face Morty. But like he goes upstairs to his mother's room and he finds his uncle, and he sees his uncle's tattoo, and then he realizes that like his uncle was the one that was having an affair with his mom, and you know, there's that whole thing. And then Morty pops up, and Richard's like, and I'm out. And then like Morty and Pete fight, and we really don't get to see much of that, but we do hear a gunshot, and well, Morty's the only one that comes out, so bye, Uncle Pete. So just to recap, the ones that we have alive are Richard, Ashley, and Tanya. Those are the only ones that are alive. So Tanya's still out in the woods too somewhere. We're not really for sure exactly where she is. But as Ashley and Richard are running from Morty, they're taking the same path in which he's had dreams about. You know, right before they started running, like, you know, he was like, it was my fault. And Ashley's like, no, like, it's the opposite, because he's been repeating the word, you know, diametric. And he's like, no, it's the opposite of that, you know. Anyways. So they get to where, like, his mom is buried in that area. And Ashley keeps running while Richard stays behind. And then, like, is attacked by his zombie mother from the grave. And then... like, the two masked figures that were digging the grave show up, and then young Richard shows up and hands him the puzzle ball thing, and he smashes it, and it's like the piece was, you know, inside all along. And so finally Richard, like, realizes that, you know, he didn't have anything to do with it, you know, he was just innocent, whatever. So he runs to like catch up with Ashley, and they run into Morty. Tanya runs into them as well, and she figures like that she'll try to help, and Morty like pushes her into the lake, and what do you know? She's not afraid of water anymore because she didn't freak out. She just climbed right out. But Richard faces his fear in Morty and tells him he's not scared of him anymore. And they hash things out in a very weird way. And then Morty, like, just starts walking into the lake and just walks into the lake. And so, like, cut to, you know, Dr. Arnold's office again, and we see Richard, and he's like, hey, yeah, I'm dropping out because, you know, police have all these questions about everything that's going on, and I don't have answers for what they want. So he's gonna drop out, and he's just gonna take off. Again, real kind of anticlimactic in that situation. And then we cut to a beautiful family looking at the house, wanting to buy it. Their son goes off kicking his soccer ball through the woods, which, I mean, the realtor was like, oh, by the way, like, I have to disclose to you some terrible things happened here. And then they're like, where's our son? And they're calling for him. And then his like ball rolls like by the lake and is stopped by a very gross looking Morty. He's not as gross as what I thought he would be, like being in the water for several weeks at least. But he's still gross. And the little boy says, are you a good guy or a bad guy? And Morty just like kicks the soccer ball to him, and that's it. That's where the movie leaves off. That's not really an answer on if he's a good guy or a bad guy. He just literally gave the little boy his ball back. So, and also there's a second one. I haven't seen it, but there's a second one, so I'm guessing that Morty's still somewhat of a bad guy. Bad spirit? Vengeful spirit? Guys, I don't know. But anywho, that was the movie. I actually kind of liked it. A lot of critics don't like it, but you know, some of the best movies are ones that critics think are stinkers. You just have to go out there and find them and watch them for yourselves. But I will see you guys back here next week. And, you know, I'm not going to give any hints as to what I'm going to do next. You'll just have to tune in and find out. As always, have a great night, sinners. Bye.